Are you conscious of your addiction? Refuse to be defined by it? Not satisfied with living your life on the surface? Are you drawn to deeper meaning and purpose? And believe that it's possible to grow through your addiction to experience true freedom? Well, welcome home. Share the journey from addiction to freedom with your host, Michael Gregory.
Well, welcome to another episode of Addiction to Freedom. This is Michael Gregory, your host, and I'm here with Palombi Veer from the United States. Actually, he's right in the thick of it, with in DC there with everything that's been going on, but he tells me he's safe. So welcome to the podcast, Palombi Veer.
Thank you for having me, Michael. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no. So I'm really keen to get to know you a little more because we've only just talked briefly. So I'm just wondering, reflecting on the themes of the podcast, being both addiction and freedom, and I kind of sense that you have a journey that you've been on for some time, where probably with addiction, you've got something to say there, and you've also I know from some of our communication that you also have moved into a pathway for freedom as well. So I'm really curious to start back at the beginning, wherever you want to start and whatever you're comfortable with. So where did you start with this journey?
So I just turned 27. So I graduated high school back in 2011. After high school, it was, you could say I was kind of lost, right? I was just looking, kind of trying to find my way in the world, figure out what was going on. Like, I knew that I didn't fit in, but I didn't know exactly like why I didn't fit in or the reasons behind it. So I guess I just was working pizza shop, like random jobs, Nordstrom Rack, retail, worked at a pizza shop for a little bit, and I'd smoke, I'd drink, and just not really knowing what I wanted, trying to find my way. And then really where I would say my journey of self-growth began was probably about 2 years ago. Beginning of 2019, I joined this program called Year Up. And what that is, it's year, so YEAR, Year Up. And you do 6 months of learning, development, and then you do 6 months of internship. So I was always interested in stocks. I didn't know what I wanted, but I was always learning. I've always been addicted to learning. I've had a lot of addictions, but I've been addicted to reading, Harry Potter, anything, you could think of. Like I like learning about self-growth, development, investing.
Can I ask you just a little bit more about that early part of your life? Would you say that you had addictions at that time, like that you're comfortable to share or not?
Yeah. So I would smoke weed. I would drink here and there.
Anything that you felt you were kind of trapped into?
I would say just myself, escaping, always looking for an escape, not always really knowing what I was running from, but running somewhere, right? Like looking, just searching, because the world is a big place and, you kind of have to explore it to learn about it.
So you obviously had questions. Is that what you were escaping from? Were you escaping or were you?
So one of the big things for me at like a young age was just like questioning what the purpose of life was. Like this was like back in high school. There's a system that high school is built on. The world is built on. It's a sheep herd kind of thing, right? Like the shepherd and the sheep. They teach you from kindergarten to follow line, stand in line, to do this, to do that, and to listen to what you're told to do. And I guess society, even family, can tell you not to think like that because family has been trained by society to think a certain kind of way. So it's like when you think outside the norm, outside the box, it's like, well, why are you worried about what life is? Just get a job, start a family, so have some kids, get a wife. Like it's not complicated, right? I'm like, well, like what are we doing here? What are humans doing here? What are we all doing here? We're just on Earth on this small planet in a large universe with multiple universes. So it's just like, there's so much more to life than just the day-to-day, 9 to 5 work, sleep schedule. And I guess I always just went against the norm, didn't really fit in. And I guess I was trying to find my place. Yeah.
The shame that is the definition of not fitting in, because In other words, that you're actually asking really fundamental questions, which are very, I think, valid questions. And I share that experience. When, I left school very similar, having those exact same questions like, what are we here for? What am I going to do? What's it all about? So I really resonate with what you're saying. And it's just such a shame that is not the norm, that's seen to be different. But so I just wanted to share that with you. But I'm interested. Keep telling what you were saying.
Well, I guess at the beginning of the journey, it was like I saw the world as darkness. It was like I saw a lot of evil in the world, and I couldn't figure it out. For me, it was like why. So I had a shirt from Siena, the internship part of the program that I was at Europe, and on the back of the shirt it said TEAM, team, and it was together everybody achieves more.
Yeah.
And my thinking is like, why can't the whole world see it the way that that statement says it, right? Like it's Russia against China, against US, against South Korea, against all these countries. We're all fighting each other. The Cold War, this war, that war, fighting for oil and resources and materials, right? And it's for what? There's an abundance. There's enough for everybody here. Why don't we try to survive as a species and think as a human race? And I could never understand that. So I guess and society's kind of sort of shun that sort of thinking. So, but yeah, no, now I'm back stronger than ever. The same ideas that I had back then are still running strong.
So the addiction side of it, was that you mentioned you're seeing the world as darkness, and I'm guessing, and tell me if I'm wrong in reading what you're saying, I'm guessing that that's because when you looked at the adult world, you saw all this conflict that seemed unnecessary. So how did your addictions, what purpose did they serve, or why do you think they came about back in that darker time for you?
I read this thing on Instagram that resonated a lot with me. It was if you were born into a world that you don't fit into, it's because you're here to help create a new one, a better one. Right. So I guess my addictions at the time, I don't know. A lot of that. So there's that argument of what you're born with, and then what is your environment, right? Your genes, what you get passed down from your parents. And I think some of my addiction had to do with what was passed down from my dad. He had passed away when I was younger, like 3 years old. But from the stories that I heard, he's probably a lot similar to me. Very kind heart, very big heart. He was an art teacher towards the end, but he also had a relationship with the bottle, right? So I guess I didn't really get to meet him. I didn't get to see that firsthand, but and I guess that's why like I sometimes think about that argument of like how much is passed down from like your blood to like how much is like what you see in your environment, how much of your addiction is because you see it everywhere around you, and how much is innate within you. This is an interesting way to look at it.
It is. So you're thinking that there might have been something passed on, and you're saying also there was something from your environment.
I think it just goes back to the fact that like the majority of society doesn't think in those terms. So just like always fitting in, like I don't know, I guess coming here from a young age, I came here when I was like 4 or 5 years old from India. Punjabi is my first language, English is my second language. So learning English, making friends, just remembering myself as a kid, I was always happy. I was always laughing. Couldn't really catch me not happy. And then it was just like I guess middle school, getting closer towards high school, where like I in middle school like everybody was friends with each other, right? There was no separation of cliques. There was none of that. It was like more unity, elementary, middle school, and then like leading into high school, it's like all right, like the jocks hang out with the jocks, the people that are into plays and stuff, theater, they hang out with the people that are into theater. People start to separate, and then it's just like me, who was just like kind of like I got along with everyone, and it was just like I'm just like which way, right? And it's just like and then it was just like I guess started not to have like as many like close friends. Circles start to change a little bit, things like that. I guess yeah, that eventually just led to that path of addiction.
Yeah, right. And was that in a way you mentioned before an escape, or was it also was it that, or was it try to explore different avenues of understanding, or both?
I think it was a little bit of everything. It was a little bit of wanting to fit into the society, but knowing that I don't belong. Because it's like when everybody, it's a consensus that everybody should fit into society, right? So like naturally, as humans, like we kind of do what the herd does, and a part of me wanted to fit in with everyone else. But then like knowing that no, there's more to life. There's more to life. And like I guess just that internal conflict that's really I think that's what it comes down to is internal conflict. That's probably the root of like a lot of my addiction.
So wanting to be part of the herd, but also recognizing that in a sense that you were recognizing that somehow you were different, mainly because you were looking for a deeper meaning and purpose in life.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And so did you hit a point where it was really painful?
Yeah, I guess because so I'm Punjabi, so like our culture is naturally its success is like it's kind of like parents and family, everybody kind of pushes you to be doctors and lawyers and engineers and that sort of thing. And I'm the youngest. So a lot of that also has to do with everything. Actually, there's so many variables that come into play. It's insane, right? Like if you could just write this down and like in a cookie cut statement, like, hey, this is why I am the way that I am, it would be easy, right? But it's a very complicated web of things that make us who we are.
So has it just been sort of like a slow simmer under the surface? You didn't have any kind of like existential crisis or anything?
No, no, I wouldn't say that I had any crisis. Just I guess.
Just a slow recognition that, how am I going to do this when I know that I'm different in a good way?
So a lot of that stemmed from like wanting to make a difference, to do more, to really have an impact in the world. But then if you want to make all right, so there's power, right? Like if you want to make a difference, if you want to have an impact, there's 8 billion people on this earth. If you want to have an impact, power. There's four ways you can break down power, right? So one is physical power. You can equate that to military might, just military strength, right? Or even physical power. Another form of power is influence. The way that we speak, the way that we talk. If we can convince 10,000 people to follow us, that's power. Another form of power is knowledge. This is my favorite form of power because through knowledge you get access to every other form of power that there is. Right? If you learn how to get stronger, if you learn how to work out, what muscles to work out, which will increase your strength, or how to get other people to follow you, how to win friends and influence people. So that kind of thing. It's knowledge. Knowledge will equate to all other forms of power. So it was sorry, there was one more. It kind of completely slipped my mind.
One that I'm thinking of is in a sense self-knowledge, because you've got knowledge. You mentioned knowledge, which can be knowledge of things, knowledge of strategies and how things work and things like that. But all of that strength, the external power, having being able to convince people, and also knowledge of facts, let's say, collection of information, all of that is presupposes or assumes me or you. And as the one who is initiating that, let's say. But so self knowledge, knowledge of where all of that starts, is a you could say it's a form of power.
I think that's the core of it all. Actually, I 100% agree. That's the journey that I've probably been on for like the last 2 years, is realizing that the greatest enemy that I'll ever face in my life is myself, right? And that's the enemy that I'll have to face every day, forever, and right, like it doesn't stop. Yeah.
So to tell me what I mean, obviously from a very young age you were drawn to asking questions
Mhm.
about what are we here for, what is life about, and so that's then continued, and you've recognised that as a pathway. So how's that developed? Where have you been along that path?
Yeah. I guess a lot of the journey of self development starts with first self forgiveness. One thing that I had to learn through addiction and just through life was not to be too hard on myself. It's level, it's level. It's like you have to be realistic, right? Because if you're not realistic, you're not going to be able to get out of whatever slump that you're in, right? But if you're too hard on yourself, it's a double negative. You're gonna beat yourself deeper into the hole, right? So it's like it's a middle ground. I think that was one of the first things that I had to learn on the journey of self development.
Can you give me an example of a way that you were too hard on yourself? What kind of was that? A kind of a thinking, judging?
I've always been a person that's been very observing. I'm smart. I see things for what they are, but then I sometimes do the wrong things anyway. And I think that's a lot of us. I don't think that I'm so special where I'm the only person that does that, right? We all do wrong things and know they're wrong and do them anyway.
So and then because you knew, let's say that wasn't a good idea, and you did it
Hmm.
anyway, and then kind of judging yourself negatively for that, as if
Right,
you know
right.
that's an example. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it.
Uh,
So and then
that's
so
exactly what it
basically,
was.
what you're saying is the first step is to give yourself a little bit more grace, in the sense of a little bit more understanding that things happen that
Well, it's self promises. This is a big thing. This is a very big thing. The promises that we make to ourselves. When we break those promises, it really defeats our confidence. It defeats a lot of things, and it hurts. It hurts us. So really, why are we telling ourselves that we're gonna do something when you know that there's a strong chance that you might not, right? And again, it's a double negative. You're going to defeat yourself. You're going to hurt yourself twice as much as you meant to when you do that. So I think just being more realistic with yourself. It's working your way up to that. Always being forgiving, like in the back of your head, like knowing that you want more. It's little goals. It's little goals. It doesn't have to be the biggest thing in the world. And for me, it was reading. It was learning to like my journey of self development. It was reading self growth books, like I will statements, right? Like focusing on things like spirituality, financial goals. Less so much of that, right? I really do think that financial goals are like the least important thing. If you maintain like your happiness, what you want, your passion. If you follow your passion in life, the money will come, no matter what it is that you're passionate about. I truly believe that every person should follow their passion. And again, what I was saying earlier, the fact that like addiction and passion are borderline terms, the same way that they say like insanity and genius are borderline terms. You could be a genius or you could be insane, and it's so close. And being passionate about something and being addicted to something are so close that like it's
well, let's
interesting. So
let's explore that a little. Let's explore that. I mean, in one way, I can see what you're saying, because when you're passionate about something, it's almost like you have to do it or you have to have it or whatever it is.
right,
Like I'm
right,
passionate about surfing.
mm,
And I really want to go every day. So I get what you're saying, and I'm actually passionate about what I'm doing here with this podcast. So, and that's similar to an addiction in the sense, like there is a similarity there, because with an addiction, it's something that you feel like you kind of have to do or have to have. Is that what you're seeing when you say that they're borderline terms or similar?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What about the other side?
Uh,
What's different about a passion and an
and
addiction?
an addiction, too much of anything is a bad thing. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is. Too much of anything is a bad thing. It's just that I guess that level changes depending on what that thing is. So you have to test everything is like by like a situation by situation basis, but for the most part, too much of anything is a bad thing.
So what you're saying, in a way, this is what I think you're saying, is that there's a point at which a passion can turn into an addiction when it gets to be too much. And the question is like, what is that tipping point? At what point does it become too much?
Well, so like for example, like let's say you get addicted to making money, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, and that's great, right? But when you start, you all your focus is into making money, and it pulls you away from your family, your kids, right, your friends. You start trying to make money off of your friends, and now you're ruining relationships. That at the end of the day, like my friend said this really great quote: "You'll never see a U-Haul following a hearse." Right, meaning that right?
That's
So
right.
you can't take it with you. You
That's
can't take it
right.
with you. When you're there on your deathbed, right? It's about who's around you, not what's around you.
So what we're saying is that at a certain point, a passion can become an addiction when it starts to have negative impacts on other important areas of your life,
Exactly. Exactly.
like your family or your relationships, or perhaps getting in the way of spending time doing other things in your life that would create more of a balance for you. Yeah, and I think that's a really good it's a good part of a definition of addiction, because there's nothing wrong with work, but when it becomes a workaholic, that's when it starts to impact on family, friends, and other healthy areas of your life. So, and there's all of these things, like having sex is not a bad thing, but when it becomes like an addiction that you just have to have it in a certain way that impacts and hurts people or yourself, or d- stops you from having a deeper connection with someone, then that would become a sex addiction or a codependency addiction, or the biggest for me, the root addiction, if we could just jump there for a minute, we can come back from from there. But the root addiction, I think, like there's all these different addictions. There's physical addictions, like substance addictions. Then you've got, let's call them emotional addictions, like being a workaholic or codependency or pornography. You could say, and then there's mental addictions, like things like, oh, I would say that if you become obsessed about looking a certain way, that's because you have this concept that you need to define, conform to this concept of how you look, and then constantly obsessed about being that.
Right, right,
That's
right,
like a
right.
mental addiction, isn't it? And then you've got, like, I think the old,
Instagram, social media addiction, right? Like now
yeah,
in today's age.
yeah. So there's like physical, mental, emotional addictions. And then the root one, I think, is what I call identity addiction, which is where we're addicted to ourselves as being the center of the universe, the most important thing. Everything is centered around me, and that I have to defend and make this me look good. This is, if if I get upset if something gets broken that I believe is mine. It's all about me, me, me. I think that addiction is probably the one to rule them all. you know, and in a sense, unpacking that then leads into a journey of self development and even and spiritual growth. So, does that make sense to you? Does that resonate with
No,
you?
absolutely, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense.
So, on your journey to, in terms of personal growth, would you say that there's been, I'm just, don't let me put words in your mouth, but would you say that there's been a loosening up of your own addiction to yourself? Because you did mention things like, team, together we all achieve more. That's not centered about you in a sense only, it's centered around we, us, everybody. That's a loosening up of that self-centeredness. That's a lessening of self-centeredness.
That's a funny question. So I guess I know that I'm different. So then knowing that I'm different, I know there's people like me, but there's not a lot of society doesn't think in the same terms that I think. Right? It's not
Right.
like a majority. And like I think maybe some of my self-centeredness comes from that thought, knowing that I don't really fit into the society, that I'm different. I know that doesn't make me special, and I know that I think in terms of like everybody, but the fact that I think in terms of everybody makes me different from everybody else. So it's like, I think that's a little bit of where my self-centeredness comes from, which, and I think the word ego is very important. Starting it like trying to lose the ego, understanding what ego is. Yeah, I think that's important. An important process of self growth.
How would you describe the ego then?
Ego is really anything that connects you to like you. That's like a pretty loose description of ego, right?
Uh-huh.
But it's like when you can really start to thinking outside of terms of yourself is when you begin to start to lose your ego. Like everything that really has anything to do with you. I don't know. Because there's so many things that tie us to being human. And I think that's all a part of ego, of the identity that we try to own. The identity that we all have this like, all right, our family, the society, our friends, they all think them this kind of way. So we all naturally kind of try to fit in and sustain that identity in society. But that's all a part of ego.
If we can unpack that a little more, because there's a few, when we talk about me, and my identity, and then we can also recognize, and I think you kind of hinted at it, you can also recognize that you can look at yourself, can recognize myself, so to speak, as if me is different from the herd or wanting to fit in with the herd, but there's always a viewer, an observer that is aware of that in a sense. I mean, even aware of our thoughts. So it's hard to say that our it's even hard to say that our thoughts are us. So in a sense, I think, and we talk also in a lot of times in personal growth, people talk about losing their ego as if that's somehow has to stop existing. And I think the problem is the confusion around who is viewing and the ego, because obviously who is viewing is in a sense able to view the ego
Right,
or what
right,
we call
right.
the ego. So it's almost like I know this is not, everything is one, but it does appear when you start to look at myself, let's say, that if I identify myself with the ego, like the one who has the name, the body, the history, the culture, the likes and dislikes, if I call that me, if I call that me, then I, who is the viewer, is becoming completely immersed in that identity. A bit like when you go to the movie and you forget you're sitting in the chair, become immersed in the movie if you're part of the movie, but that's artificial.
Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, being present in the moment. If you're 100% comfortable with who you are, always being who you are in every second and every breath, not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future. And I think there's a lot of power of being in the moment. So meditation, just breathing. Honestly, like I think meditation, just the word, it scares a lot of people. So it's good to just sometimes just take a deep breath. I guess feel the weight of your body as you're sitting, right? Like feel your breath, your chest expand and get back. So that's it. Just start with that. Just bring you back to reality. I think it ties back a lot to what you were saying.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in a sense, they're kind of it's kind of a doorway to slow down
Mm-hmm.
and also slow down in your thinking, because
Mm-hmm.
often our thinking is happening so fast and we're so caught up in our stream of thoughts that we don't actually see that we are different from our thinking, that our existence is not dependent on our thinking. Our thoughts can be there or not there or this or that, but we are still the same, whatever we are. I think what you're talking about there with Eckhart Tolle, what we are is that presence that is able to be aware. In fact, is awareness of all these things, including myself. Which in a sense, if you really look at it, myself is, in terms of, if I try to describe it, is a collection of ideas, imaginations, memories, which are a kind of imagination with a special quality. And if we look at that and we call that, give it a name, like Palombi or Michael, we give this collection, this construction, a name. And if we go through our day not recognizing that who is observing that is completely free of that, but that in a sense can change. Like what I like or dislike can change. My body can change. My body can get chopped off.
Our taste buds change every 7 years, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
yes,
what
all
we
our
like,
cells.
what we dislike, it changes all the time. I used to hate pickles. I love them. Like I can't have a sandwich without pickles these days, you know? So I agree. I agree.
Yeah. So if we kind of summarize it, let's go back to the beginning. We could say that you recognize at an early age. I mean, obviously you had this sense of difference
Mhm.
in not only in coming from India to America at such a young age, you would have felt a difference. A different
Right,
culture
right.
for starters, and then you went deeper and you had these questions of what is this about, and then it led into exploring different alternatives. I guess some of those good and some of those not so good, and then you've started to develop more of a I don't know an inclination, a calling, a movement towards greater understanding of not only what life is but what you are, and that's what I'm seeing from this conversation anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly it. No, I came to a point where I realized that first, if I want to achieve my dream of like understanding life, civilization, society, everything, it all starts with me first understanding myself. And it also goes to another statement like, before, I forget exactly how it goes, but that the idea is that like before you could save the world, you have to save yourself. Before you can worry about the bigger picture, you have to worry about yourself first. So there's levels to this.
When I hear that, what immediately comes to my mind
Mm-hmm.
is who is saving me or you? Like when I
Mm-hmm.
say I have to save myself, which I totally agree with, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
but who is saving me? What me is saving me? Is it the ego me saving me? Well, in a sense, the ego's not really the one who is aware. We are aware of the ego. We are aware of all the aspects that congregate, coalesce to be the ego. So the ego can't be saving me, and so it's an interesting question that I like to think about that sometimes. Like, well, it seems to me that at first glance on the surface, it's like, yeah, the first place to look is me.
And I think I would get away from the word save, and I think I would move more towards the word understand,
I think I like that too, actually.
because I'm not somebody that needs to be saved. I never was. It's just the more that I understand about myself, the more strength it gives me. What you were saying earlier is like fully owning up to your identity. When you have an identity, like fully owning it all the way. So I think the first thing is more important to understand who you are, why you are, address the things that you're okay with, and then address the things that you're not okay with, right? And start beginning to take action towards that as you see fit.
Yeah, yeah. And so where do you see this going for you?
It's an up and down road, it really is. It's a journey. Life's not about the destination; it's about the journey. I used to think about that, right? Like, what's the purpose of life? The purpose of life is to find your purpose of life. Right? It's the beauty of the journey that's everything. It's not, there is no purpose of life. It's everything in between. So, and I'm just on that journey, right? I'm just every day is moving forward, learning more. I mean, I'm in cybersecurity. I'm just trying to figure out how I can align my values with my ambitions, holding true to who I am, like with my perception of the world, and then also needing to fit in to achieve my goals that I need to achieve. Just I guess finding that balance in the middle. That's where I'm at. It's a journey. So
Yeah, it is a journey, isn't it? And I can see there that you've got a few different layers going on. Like there's your journey in the world,
Mhm.
money, work, stuff, goals, things like that. And then there's your journey internally, your understanding of yourself, the nature
Right,
of your own
right.
existence, and how
The
that
art of
interplays.
Yeah, it's sorry, it just reminded me of something, the art of war, Sun Tzu. One of the things he had said was like, if you don't know yourself and you don't know the enemy, you're gonna lose 100 battles. If you know
Yeah,
one or the other, you'll go 50-50. But if you
yeah,
know yourself and you know the enemy, right, and you have empathy, right, and that knowing the enemy has a part to do with being empathetic and understanding their point of view, being able to put yourself in their shoes. But you know yourself and you know the enemy, and you need not fear 100 battles, right? So,
yeah. In fact, it ceases to be a battle
mm,
once
yeah,
with that understanding, because
right.
there's a recognition that what is me,
Hmm.
who is viewing, is actually the same as you in the sense, your awareness, the very fact that you are aware, and my awareness, the very fact that I'm aware, it's actually the same awareness. I mean, I know that sounds like a concept, but if you once you break it down and realize that nothing happens outside of our awareness, everything that we think happens outside of our awareness is an imagination. Like, for example, let's say that there's a car accident outside, right? So immediately I'm aware in my programming, I immediately imagine a road out there and a car accident, and the sounds and everything correlate with that, and I put all that together like software, put it all together, and I have this geolocation, this spatio-temporal map of where I am at this building, and all of that I take to be reality, but I'm actually forgetting or not even realizing that all of that is occurring in imagination right now, and it only ever was. Everything outside of what I can see,
Right.
what I can hear, is imaginary. I'm not saying it's less real, but that is in fact how it is real.
Mm-hmm.
We keep it alive in our imagination. I'm
We
not
make
saying
it real. Right, right, right. Our perception is what makes it real. If we didn't perceive it for what it was, it would be something totally different, right? Two people could look at the same thing and see it in a different kind of way, and their reality is only as much as they see.
well, that's right. Somebody could hear that accident and think that
Mm-hmm.
it was the person next door watching an accident on TV in a movie,
Right, right,
right? And that
right.
they would put that phenomena together in a different to a
Mm, mm,
different imaginary form. But what I'm
right,
saying is that nobody has ever experienced anything outside of their awareness.
right. Other than dreaming, I mean, I guess that's within your awareness, though.
Yeah,
I think that's about like the closest thing you could say, but it's still within your awareness, right? Because it's your
yeah.
dream.
And your feelings and your thoughts. Who is aware of all these things, right? Like, and when we talk about tomorrow, we're imagining tomorrow, and when we talk about the past, that's a kind of an imagination called memory. It's an imagination, but we give a certain label to of certainty that it happened, right? And I'm not suggesting that all of these things are fantasy, but the way that they present and are alive and that we are aware of them is always present and always by virtue of our own awareness. And it never has ever been any different. So my awareness, and let's say your
Hmm.
awareness,
Right.
when you really start to focus on the awareness rather than the content, the very fact, the facility of awareness, everything, the whole world The
Right.
whole world is alive to me in my awareness.
Right.
And the thing is that you have that facility as well. And that's exactly the same awareness, just shining through a different facet, shining through a different, like
Right.
I imagine that you have awareness but I'm only aware of that through the virtue of awareness, which is we are all within,
Right.
in a
Right.
sense. And that doesn't have an
Um,
identity, doesn't have an identity.
have you heard of the Sikh religion at all?
Seek. I
Sikh,
have heard
Sikh.
of
It's pronounced Sikh. Yep.
it. I've heard of it, but I don't really understand much. I'm welcome to tell me.
No, it was just one thing. It was called Ekumkar, Ekumkar. One God. A lot of the stuff that we believe in is oneness. That God is within all of us. I'm not super religious, but I think that every religion has a little bit of truth. Every religion has a little bit of truth, and each religion tells a story. That if you can take yourself outside of like believing everything that they're trying to convince you of, they're not all wrong. No one is all wrong. Literally every religion has truth within it.
Well,
But yeah,
well, in a sense, or in a sense of any teaching that someone's trying to convince us of
mhm,
is a
mhm,
set of concepts,
right, right,
right? And what they're trying to do with those concepts, with that communication, is to point us to an experience of oneness.
hmm,
And then that experience is actually obviously beyond concepts because awareness is aware of concepts. So awareness is primary. Awareness is already present. And so, yeah, so I agree with you in the sense that almost every religion that I've had a look at has this understanding of oneness and is pointing to that experiential reality. I think at some point, stepping away from the concepts, or at least understanding the concepts till it becomes an innate experience, is kind of the goal. And I think at that point, that's when I don't think the ego necessarily disappears, but kind of becomes, it's not the driver of the bus anymore,
right, right, right,
right?
right.
Because, the driver of the bus is the one who is aware.
Mm.
And
It was
even
funny.
using one very loosely.
There was a moment that I had. I think it was about a year and 3-4 months ago, 2019, late 2019. It was a song that I was listening to. I had gotten into a fight with my now ex girlfriend. We had gotten into a fight, and I was listening to a song on repeat, and I was feeling nothing but like really good vibes. And I listened to that song as I was falling asleep, almost like in a meditative state. I don't know if you know about like the brain, the different levels that we're at, like delta, sigma, alpha, beta. Like when you're going into sleep and when you're first waking up from sleep, your brain is most programmable, most susceptible to be like kind of programmed. So I think that's what that was. I don't know exactly, but I was listening to that song for hours before I fell asleep, and when I woke up, it was like the most powerful thing. Like I had I had such a clear, like, to be in a battle like that, right, the night before, and like to be going through whatever I was going through emotionally, mentally, and then to wake up the next day with just like full clarity. And it lasted about 2 days. I wouldn't forget it, right? It lasted like full clarity. Like I just knew everything that I needed to do, and it was like there was no question of like why. It was no emotions really behind it. It was like I know, like it just was. I don't know. It was really hard to explain. It's really hard to explain. And then I think like society kind of just like pulled me back after a few days, like back to like, the ego, just right back where it was. But I wouldn't forget that. I wouldn't forget that. That's kind of what I strive for. Trying to understand how that worked out, how my brain worked. Like I don't know what I was processing like overnight, to be able to wake up with full clarity like that. So it's interesting to me how the brain works.
Yeah, yeah. It is, and it just shows your example there shows how your experience can change based on your perception, in a
Mm-hmm.
sense, because you were fully immersed in the interaction with your girlfriend or your ex-girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
You're fully
Mm-hmm.
immersed in that like you're in a movie, but you weren't a you're like when you're in a movie, you're not aware that you're sitting in the seats.
Right.
You
Right.
forget that you're even in the building, you're in the movie, right?
Right. Right.
You forget that you're sitting there, you forget yourself. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what happens in certain, a lot of our experience, particularly strong emotional experiences, our perception of our existence becomes immersed into the phenomena. And then you went to sleep, yeah, listen to that music, and it somehow kind of got
Kind of reprogram my brain a little bit.
kind of pulled it apart a bit, so that your sense of self, who you were, was no longer whirling around in turmoil,
Right.
like, because it's like you realized, oh, I'm not, I, the me who is
Right.
aware, is actually not, is more than this circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
I can see other things outside of this particular phenomena,
Right.
like the
Right.
vortex or something. you
Right.
know
Right.
it's
Right.
other things now. It's not only this thing that I'm immersed in. It's like in the movie, and you wake up and you realize, oh, actually, there's an exit there. I could walk out there.
Right.
I've still got a drink. I could have a drink of that. There's all these other
Yeah.
alternatives when you
Right.
widen out. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So look, I think. I mean, you said you're 27, so you know, you're, in a sense, for someone your age, fully asking all of these questions, and you're really in, on your own journey of waking up, and I think it's very inspiring and encouraging, and I really just want to say that it's a privilege to meet you, and I'm sure that, this is, you're not, there's nothing, you won't be able to stop this. This is going to keep going,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and
Absolutely.
yeah. Although I will
I
say
won't be
one,
able to stop it. Yeah, it's within me. Like the idea of growth, just to get better and to learn more
yeah,
about me, the world. It's just
yeah,
I can't stop it, even if I wanted to.
yeah, yeah. Although I can say from my own experience, starting in that same way, that you can get, it's like a river where you get caught in a current, and a certain current in life that carries on for 20 years, even though you're still the person who's interested in all this stuff, but there's so much that has to be taken care of in the world, let's say, that the actual amount of time that you spend investigating, and can be lessened. And I really, but obviously, all of it's part of the big river, let's say.
Right, right,
What
right.
current you get, caught in, but I think, making a strong determination to dedicate your energy and time to this investigation would
Hmm.
be helpful. If we don't, we can become like a cork that bobs along on other people's. We
Hmm.
get sucked into other people's currents, other people's agendas,
Hmm. Hmm.
and maybe that's not necessarily serving this core purpose that's within us.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I guess one thing I could say, just a word of advice, I guess, to any listeners, is that the first thing I said is first learning how to forgive yourself. That's like the first step is I think in being fully content with where you are in life. I have a lot of goals that I want to accomplish and I'm nowhere near a lot of them. And I'm fully okay with that. I'm fully okay. I'm happy with my family, my friends, the people around me. And I think that's important. Even though I aim for more and I strive for that, just being really okay. Like battling addiction is not easy. It's consuming. But the first step is just forgiveness and recognizing whatever it is that you're battling, and the
yeah,
internal battle, right? It,
yeah,
it all ties in with everything we talked about, the internal battle that we're all battling. And I think something that's really, really, really important is addressing our whys. If anybody wants to make a change, do something different, your why is it's not about how you do something; it's about why. You'll
Oh,
figure out the way how. You'll figure out how if you know why.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
I think that's really powerful. Just it's
yeah,
all conversations that we all have with ourselves.
yeah,
That's most important. You know? So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, that's a really, really very valuable things to remember and pursue. And
Mhm.
I'm kind of aware of the time, and I don't feel like we should bring it to a close. And I really appreciate your time, and it's been really great to meet you. And I'm kind of curious to
Yeah.
see how things go with you in the future.
Yeah.
So let's keep in touch.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Maybe we'll have this conversation again.
yeah. Well, hope so. Hope so. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Well,
Right
all
on.
right. Well, okay. Well, thanks so much. Just stay there while
Mhm.
and while I just bring things to a close here. All right.
Sure.
See
All
you
right.
later.
All right, Michael.